Horse Thief Hollow has become the most awarded brewery on the south side of Chicago. 10 major awards, not like a leg lamp in the window.
That's me imposing my own drinking habits on the general public.
That's fair. I am the king.
I can see through the beer, through the camera, through that beer.
It's amazingly clear. It's crazy. Now, Morrison, you wanted to throw down a little bit of a challenge to me. This is the first
I did.
on Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer. Welcome to Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer, the podcast that will increase your enjoyment of craft or local beer, whatever you call it, and most importantly, the people who make it. We've traveled to the Beverly neighborhood on the south side of Chicago to go from grain to glass with Jake Nelson. He's the head brewer, and Adrian Morrison. Why do I have Adrian Nelson like you guys are brothers? It's Adrian Morrison. He is a brewer and the sales manager for Horse Thief Hollow Brewing Company on Western Avenue. We're going to share stories that make each brewer unique. I am beer drinker and hellraiser Brian Noonan, and my opinions are strictly my own, and my typos also strictly my own. For good reason. Behind the camera is our executive producer, Cody Goff. With me, as always, is the high priestess of hops, the matriarch of malts, the femme fatale of fermentation, the siren of suds, the regent of remote podcasting. She is the co-founder of Exit Strategy Brewing Company, Catherine Vallow. Catherine, we're back on the south side. I know you've been here before. Are you excited to be back at HTH, as the kids like to call it?
I am. Is that what the kids are saying? That sounds great.
That's what the kids say.
I'm super excited because I think this is probably the only time that we are going to get to discuss actual thieving of horses and like the stealing of horses in a beer podcast. So I'm really excited to talk about, something that happened in the 1850s and how things came to be.
And a special surprise for you, Catherine. We will be shooting a horse thief at the end of this episode. That's right.
That sounds great. Wait a minute.
It's going to be fun.
We're the ones with all the guns.
I'm just saying something will be done. So, all right, let's start with that. We've got Jake Nelson, the head brewer, and Adrian Morrison, who I will refer to just as Morrison for the rest of the time.
That's good.
Before we get into your backgrounds, what is the deal with the name? What is Horse Thief Hollow all about?
I think we should let the sales guy give that pitch.
Yeah. So I love this story. I love the history of Chicago. I love the history of the South Side, and I love the history of Horse Thief Hollow. So I have told this story a dozen times, and one more won't hurt. So,
all right, perfect.
The story starts with a man by Lane DeWitt, and he was the first settler over 103rd and Sealy, just about.
Did he have an Irish bar?
I'm sure he did.
Probably.
Sure
Everybody in this neighborhood does.
And so he was the first settler, and his kids actually sold the property to Thomas Morgan, who Morgan Park is actually named after.
Okay.
And so Thomas Morgan owned the land, and it's disputed, but he owned the land somewhere between 103rd to 115th, Rockwell to Longwood Avenue, which is the ridge right there.
Yeah.
And so he owned a cattle and sheep farm, and he got tired of horse thieves on his property. And so he actually got the Illinois militia to run off the horse thieves. And so there's no evidence of it because, the history's been long gone, but I like to think there was a battle somewhere on the south side between the Illinois militia and these horse thieves. And so the Rich Historical Society actually has done some history into this, and they say from 103rd to 108th on Longwood is actually where the horse thieves resided.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, and so this pays
homage?
tribute to horse thieves? But I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm with Catherine. I dig it.
I mean, if you've got a place to stash the horses, stash the horses.
You might as well stash them. And Jake, having grown up in Beverly, you know that all of us not from Beverly, Longwood is where we would drive to see where the rich people lived.
Oh, same here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Ooh,
from
look at those
the other
houses.
side, but yeah, and that's another part of it too. Is that up Longwood is that's a ridge there.
Yes.
And it's on the we're actually right by the highest point of Chicago, so it was also a lookout point, and that's why it was an attractive area for the horse thieves.
Yeah.
Very nice. Well, we're here on Western Avenue where a lot of fun and chicanery has happened over the years, from horse thieves to parades to everything else. And for the last 10 years, they've been brewing beer and cooking up good food here at Horse Thief Hollow. So let's start with you, Jake. You are, as I mentioned, you grew up in this neighborhood. What brought you to the beer world?
Well, I was 21, and that was 2012. So, the craft beer scene in Chicago was really kicking off right around then.
Okay.
So, I had a passing interest in beer. I had dabbled a little bit in good beers before I became of age. It was like a couple of 312s, a couple of Sierra Nevadas, and I couldn't wait till I could walk into the store. So that kind of coincided with Horse Thief Hollow opening.
Okay.
And so it was really a great timing for me as a, new growing beer nerd.
Okay.
So I had this local brew pub open in my neighborhood, and I came here, and my mind was blown. I ended up getting a job at Binny's as my first beer job.
Okay.
Stocking the shelves. And, from there, I just befriended Dave and Neil, the original head brewer and the owner. And the rest was kind of history. I weaseled my way into a job.
So you've been here your whole brewing career.
I started here.
Okay.
And then I've since moved on. I did a short stint at Finch's Beer Company at their old original location.
Oh, up in Albany Park?
Albany Park, yeah.
Okay.
So I learned a lot about how to move a lot of beer. We had 30 fermenters.
Wow.
So we were turning and burning beer back then. And then I moved on to Weiner Beer Company.
Okay.
And I was the original head brewer over there. And
Nice.
got a lot of experience barrel aging, doing farmhouse ales, sours, all of that. And then when Dave, the original head brewer, was moving home to Florence, New Jersey to open his new brewery,
Oh, okay.
they called me back and asked me to run the show. So I
Perfect.
made my way back here in 2019.
Very nice. And the brewery itself opened in 2013, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct? All right. Morrison, how'd you get involved in beer?
I too drank beer at a very young age. We won't talk about what age, but I joined the military at high school.
Okay.
And so, being in the Marine Corps, we all drank a lot of beer. So some of the beers that I used to like were like Yingling. I was on the East Coast, so I got to try a lot of craft beer out there. And then when I moved back to Illinois, one of the guys that I served with is from Chicago, so he brought me out to the South Side. I'm originally from Aurora.
Okay.
And, I had a couple of friends that worked here at Horse Thief as bartenders and as servers. And so I got a job here running food. And I kind of worked my way up. I was a bartender. I worked in the kitchen as a line cook and a prep cook. And then in 2018, I got deployed back to Afghanistan.
Oh, man.
2019, I got deployed back to Afghanistan. And when I got back, I emailed Neil, the owner, and asked him if he had a job for me. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, what do you got? He said, do you want to brew beer? I was like, hell yeah, And so that's when Jake took me under his wing and taught me pretty much everything I know about making beer and brewing. So we started with cellar work and then worked my way up from there, and he taught me how to brew.
Well, and we hear that from everybody. They started in the cellar. Can you clear what does cellar work mean? Because I picture you down underground like a mole shoveling grain and
it's cleaning is what it is. It's it's a lot of
look
cleaning.
at Jake's like, yeah, I don't have to do that anymore, right?
No, I still love my cellar work. But yeah, I mean, if I can touch on that,
Yes,
the cellar is where beer is made. So we make wort on the brew deck, but really, if you're getting your hands on it, you can really mess the beer up a lot easier in the cellar. So that's really where oxygen comes into play. You want to avoid that, and it's all sanitation. So you're cleaning tanks, you're sanitizing tanks, you're purging tanks, packaging, all those steps. They're really important, and it's not any less important than wort production. It's just a good way to get your hands on it, learn how to move liquids around, learn how to work pumps, that kind of stuff.
And I would imagine, like in any job, you have to know it from the ground up. So you can't just come in and go, I'm just going to work in the brew house and I'm going to stir the tanks without knowing what's happening somewhere else, right?
Yeah, you basically work backwards. I mean, the first thing you'll probably do here is you're going to fill a keg. You're going to clean a keg, and then you're going to fill a keg. And then you'll transfer beer and work backwards, and eventually on the brew house when you're really comfortable with everything. So we prefer not to throw a complete newbie up on the brew deck.
It's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Just for whatever reason. How long? What is that process? I'm sure every person who starts it has a different timeline. What was your timeline, Morrison? To go, all right, I'm coming in. I'm going to start in the cellar, and then 47 years later, they finally let me see daylight.
Yeah, it's kind of one big blur, but I assume I probably did a lot of cellar work within a year, and then after that, I probably got some time on the brew deck, supervised, of course, and then over the time, it was like, hey, you got this one? And I was like, oh, wait, really? Like yeah, I'm going to be in the office, so.
No, I'm going to be out of the building.
Yeah. So
what do you look for then in an assistant brewer to say, yeah, they're ready. I can leave the building and come back tomorrow.
I mean, it's the ability to follow our SOPs. That's
Okay.
been huge. But the smaller operations, a lot of times, you're lucky if you've got written SOPs, but it's something that's really important on any scale. So you want that repeatability. You want to make sure that every person who's doing a process is doing the process the same way, and enough repeatability where you can execute all the tasks without looking at the SOP, but you're still following it to a T.
Very nice. So, for those who don't know, and Catherine, I know you know this, in 10 years, Horse Thief Hollow has become the most awarded brewery on the south side of Chicago. 10 major awards, not like a leg lamp in the window, but big awards. Now, the first couple were in, as you mentioned, your predecessor, Dave's era. What medals were won under Dave's tutelage?
Yeah, so the first one was the sweet potato beer called Cheval Deux. That was in 2013. That was the first year that Horse Thief Hollow was brewing.
They won an award in the first year.
Yeah, silver at the World Beer Cup. That was actually part of my in, because I saw the award, and then I ran into Dave at Rock Island Public House, a great craft beer bar around here. And I was like, hey, congrats, by the way. And so,
very nice.
It was a nice in for me. And then after I became his assistant, then we won a bronze, I believe, at GABF for 18th Rebellion Kolsch. And then after that, it was, it's tough. There was a beer to guard that without sweet potato. And that's gotten 2 medals, I believe.
Man.
There was Hilltop Weizenbach aged on Palo Santo wood at Fobab that got a gold medal. There was,
Did you ever get tired of winning? What's going on? What's going on with Horse Thief Hollow? Just winning. When did the reign of Little Wing started in 2020, right, with a bronze medal?
That was 2020,
Yeah. And so tell us about Little Wing, which has gone on not only to win the bronze, but then it won first place gold at the Great American Beer Fest in 2023. It won at the 2023 World Beer Cup. It won a gold. I'm drinking it now. I'll give it a platinum. I don't know if that's even an award,
Thank you.
but I will give it that, just because I want you guys to have more hardware to hang behind the bar.
I appreciate it. We're due for one.
What is Little Wing, and what do you think makes it so popular and such a great Pilsner to keep winning these awards?
Well, opening a brew pub down here, especially in 2013, it was really important that we had a light beer on, because you got to get people in the door, and the craft beer market, especially over here, hadn't evolved to the point where you could just give people IPAs and fill the place up. Okay. So the 18th Rebellion Kolsch was the first go at that, and with limited tank space back then, it had to be an ale. We had to be able to turn and burn that every couple weeks. But then when production capacity expanded, it was time to make a Pilsner and really do it upright and make something that was approachable to the everyday beer drinker, but also very respectable to your craft beer nerd. So you can hit both of those boxes with that, and really it's just made to be easy drinking beer that you don't have to think about.
Yeah, it's
I
something
want to jump in if I can.
Please.
Talking about Pilsners, this was a discussion that I had recently with another craft beer human that was like, the thing with Pilsners is when you have to nail it. Like, it's one of those, it's such a great style. and it can be very simple, but simple doesn't mean easy. Simple means you've got to nail it, because if anything is off, then it can be a little bit funky. And I think with Pilsners too, folks don't understand, not that they don't understand. I don't know that generally folks realize the amount of time that brewing takes, right? It isn't like beer does not fall from the sky. It doesn't like drop down from the heavens. It takes time. And ale time versus lager time is hugely different as well. So like, you know, you're sitting on something for 6, 7, 8 weeks to make sure that it comes out exactly right.
Morrison now has worked his way up. What are the challenges of a Pilsner? Jake was talking about some of the difficulties of a Pilsner. What are the difficulties of the Pilsner?
You know, there's not a lot to hide behind,
Okay.
right? If you mess up, it's very clear.
Okay.
Right? So
where can the mess up come?
you know, like we said earlier, sticking to our SOPs and making sure that everything is clean and
Okay.
sanitary, because those off flavors could easily show up.
Oh, okay.
Right? If your equipment's not sanitary, and then if you're just not following your standard procedure when it comes to that beer, right? We've got a set standard when it comes to that beer, and if you don't follow that set standard, you could also get off flavors from the beer itself.
Okay.
Yeah,
I want to.
so it's really big about repeatability, especially when you've gone to make a multi-award winning beer.
Yeah.
Now we have to keep it up at that level all the time.
Yeah.
But, you know, Rick, I'm really big on getting great German hops, and I've learned to really love German Tettnang hops. And sometimes they can be hard to source. It's not impossible, but it's not as easy as getting a bag of Centennial hops.
Okay.
But like, we won't compromise on getting the best quality German hops.
Well,
So-
you can't though, right? Like you said, if people come in and they go, "Wow, Little Wing has won all these awards. I've had it before. I love it." It's almost and this is not a. It's almost like McDonald's. You want the Big Mac that tastes like a Big Mac every time you come in.
Definitely.
And I'm not equating this only in the fact that if people want Little Wing, they want Little Wing the way you guys have brewed it.
Exactly.
So
yeah.
that's probably, would that be the biggest challenge, just the consistency of it?
Yeah, and like one of the biggest parts of the consistency is being able to get to that 6 to 8 week mark. Okay. And when it's your hottest cellar, sometimes you're getting pressure to have a beer on quicker.
Oh, okay.
And you may be tempted to compromise on a full lager time. But it shows. So we've had to learn, one, to plan out farther than we think, because these do need a good amount of tank time. You can't short it. If it's not clear, it doesn't. The first thing people see is the clarity of the beer.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
So when we're coming at the end of a batch of Pilsner, it's completely crystal clear.
Yeah, you can. I can see the logo.
I can see through the beer, through the camera, with you probably 2 feet from that screen. I can see you through that beer.
It's
that
amazingly clear. It's crazy.
So if we finish our last keg of crystal clear Pilsner, and now we're kind of rushing the next one, and it's a little bit cloudy, there's no hiding that.
Yeah.
At all.
Yikes.
So it comes down to planning and really being able to like resist the temptation to compromise on quality just to put beer out. And it can be a struggle sometimes, but like I said, once we've got awards on the line, this is our reputation. We have to deliver gold medal Pilsner every time.
It's nice to have that pressure, though, isn't it? It's like, hey, we've made this beer that everybody loves. I guess we have to do it the same way every time.
Yeah.
We're going to take our break in a second, but yes, Cody.
Real quick before we go to break, did you give me the little?
I did, yes.
Yes.
This beer is so good. It's
Thank you.
so good. Like I wish we should describe it for our listener.
Well, right.
But I'm having a hard time. All I can say is smooth.
I have a couple more questions.
Oh, you have more questions.
Let me ask another question about Little Wing, and then we'll take our break and we'll adjust from there if that's okay. Because, like I said, the first contest, you won a bronze with it, which not too bad.
Nope.
What kind of tweaks did you make over the next couple years that now it's repeated gold medals?
I mean, 100 batches of it is one of the most, but
All right.
I just brewed this beer nonstop.
Everything else fell off the cliff. I focused nonstop on Little Wing. That was it. Morrison slept here. All he did was brew Little Wing.
Yeah, that's a lot of what went into it. But I mean, it's tweaking fermentation profiles. I mean, we've gone through so many changes. We switched malts. We've switched yeasts.
Okay.
And really, it just came down to that kind of stuff and making sure that we held it to that high standard, and we just got better at it.
I was actually just going to ask if there was a malt switch. Little Wing is delicious. I've had Little Wing. Little Wing is incredible, and I am on the spectrum of beer drinkers. I tend to be more on the like saison-y and darker, and like I don't go for Kolsch's and Pilsners generally, but I'm trying to get more into them. And Little Wing it's an incredible beer. But when you said you were tweaking recipes, I was like, I wonder if malt played a role in that. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and we've gone from using German malt, which is like if you're making a Pilsner, that's the first go, right? You want to make it as true to style as possible, but really philosophically, I believe in using our domestic product as much as we can. So, and our American malt is great.
Okay.
But we're making a Pilsner here, and we started using American malt, and it's great stuff. And a lot of people would turn their nose up at doing that, but I think I kind of learned that philosophy through making farmhouse ales. It's like you brew with your local stuff and what you got, and it's going to taste like our water and
nice
and our domestic malts.
All right, Cody wanted a description. Morrison, will you tell? We already know it's a Pilsner, but what else should we know about Little Wing? What makes it so special? If somebody hasn't had it and they come into the tap room, which is at 10426 Southwestern Avenue in Chicago. By the way, horsethiefbrewing.com is the website. I snuck that in. That's right. But they sit down at the bar. They go, "Oh, we saw the guys talking about it." What can they expect when they get that beer?
I mean, it's crisp, cool, refreshing. There's a little bit of a malty sweetness to it, right? There's a little bit of you can taste those German hops in there.
Okay.
So I mean, it's crisp, cool, refreshing, and I mean I can have 6 of them.
You don't have
he's
to
the sales
say
manager.
Yeah, you don't have to say much about a Pilsner.
Yeah.
No, you don't. Is it good? Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
All right, this is the time where we take a little beer break. When we come back, the guys are going to tell us a beer that they're excited about here at Horse Thief Hollow. Jake Nelson is the head brewer. He grew up right here in Beverly, and now he's back. And Morrison, Adrian is his first name, but we like to just call him Morrison. He's the brewer here and the sales manager. So we'll be back in just a second. All right, beer break is, it's starting because we got our beers. And I am talking, and Catherine is talking, and we are talking on Crafty Brewers to Jake Nelson, the head brewer, and Adrian Morrison, or as we like to call him, just Morrison. It's easier that way. He is the brewer and sales manager. We are at Horse Thief Hollow Brewing Company, 10426 Southwestern Avenue in the Beverly neighborhood of Chicago. All right, gentlemen. We've gone to...
Wait, hang on. Can we just... Our head brewer here just reminded me to start the clock. That is attention to detail.
That's attention to detail. It's SOP that I obviously do not follow. That's why the consistency is way off on this show.
Amazing.
It's unlike Little Wing, where everything is completely perfect all the time.
We just need
either that or Jake was like, I don't want any extra time. Let's go. I know how long I'm supposed to be here. Let's finish it up.
I'm just on top of it.
Let's wrap it. All right. Well, we're back with the guys. What have we decided that we are going to sample here? What is this, gentlemen?
So this is Annexation, our West Coast IPA.
Which differs from East Coast IPA because of the hops?
The hops and the style in general.
Okay.
So you'll see that it's clear versus your East Coast, which is hazy.
Okay.
And then your East Coast are typically more citric, or not citric, but tropical fruits.
Tropical.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we lean into the bitterness a little bit, but we don't take it too hard.
Yeah.
But then we go citrusy.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot drier too.
That's I was getting the hop bitterness.
Yep.
But there's nothing at the back end that like sticks to your tongue.
I am
bitter but crisp.
happy to see West Coast coming back, like in a big way. Like all of a sudden, West Coast are just back, and they're back in such a wonderful way.
Yeah, it's great because there was a point in which that I was pulling IBUs out of this beer to try to keep up with the trends. I'm like, oh, less bitterness, and now West Coast is back, so I'm like, all right, let's jam it, and it's still not too bad, but I'll creep it up maybe a little bit more.
What are its IBUs?
It is at 70.
Nice.
What do you think brings back a trend like that? Because I've heard of West Coast IPAs forever. I didn't realize they had fallen out of favor, but what then brings them back?
It's cyclical. I mean, you go to one extreme. It was as low bitterness IPA as possible. Let's make a 0 IBU IPA.
Is that possible?
Let's make them. It's not possible at all.
Okay, I was going to say I don't.
But people say that, and they have gone for the, let's pretend or let's do our best to fight the alpha acids in our hops and make a really hoppy beer, and that's cool. But then people swing back and they want to drink the IPAs that they liked 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. The thing about Annexation, I was never a big IPA guy, but I like double hopped or dry hopped IPA, and this kind of has that crispness at the back that for me reminds me of a dry hopped IPA.
Yeah, it's nice and dry hopped. We don't go as heavy as we do on our hazy, but we do hit it pretty hard. And we one thing that we've done to the recipe recently was add simple sugars. We just throw in table sugar into it to dry it out a little bit more.
Wow, okay.
And that helps the bitterness and just the hops pop a little bit in a different way than an East Coast IPA.
Is the South Side a good market for like more experimental beers? Because you said when you opened, Little Wing was the perfect thing after the Kolsch because that's people were used to drinking that kind of stuff. Has this area of town become more experimental, more open to trying new things?
So yeah, definitely. I mean, the stories of when this place first opened and there was light beer on tap, right, for a little while there. That time has come and gone to where you have people coming in here specifically to get an IPA, specifically to get a hazy IPA. They love coming in and seeing, and we have a very diverse tap list, and they love seeing that, and they love seeing the beers change throughout the months, right? We have a Hefeweizen on, we have a Vienna Lager on.
Yeah.
They love seeing the different beers, and we love making different beers. So,
all right, I have to ask Morrison. I read a story about you guys, and which is, you don't have a lot of pub out there. You're very secretive here in Beverly, and I like that. I admire that about you. But you said, and I quote, "Sometimes we're our own worst critic," end quote. Now that could be a good thing, but that can also be a hindrance. And I know that kind of mindset. You'd be like, "Oh, but there's one more thing. Maybe I could do one more." So what makes you go, "I don't need to do one more thing. This beer is just what I want to give people"?
Yeah, it could maybe be a personality flaw of mine, but it's never done. I can. There's no point in which I'm like, this is done. I mean, when we first got a gold, it was like, okay, we've nailed it. Let's not mess with it, and we really don't. But I'm still always making sure that it's where it's at. I'll never say I'll never change the recipe. If palates change, if ingredients change, I mean, we're using agricultural products too, so maybe if our domestic malt isn't tasting as good, or maybe if those German hops aren't up to standard.
Is that a matter of changing the recipe, or just realizing we got a bad batch of hops, or our malt is a little off this time, but the recipe is still solid?
Well, you always have to respond to the agricultural aspect of it.
Okay.
I mean, the barley crops are what they are, and the hop crops are what they are, especially at our scale. I mean, we're not able to go and select our hops. We don't get to pick lots. We buy what's left over. So sometimes the best stuff can get taken up by the bigger breweries. But for the most part, the only beer that is done is I'm gonna say that's Little Wing.
Little Wing is done.
But other than that, it's
after
always,
10 years.
Yeah, it's always in process.
Okay.
Well, can we swing back super fast? Do we have a second to swing back to one thing that was just said? And it's, we need to understand as consumers. I mean, brewers get it, and like we get this. But I think as consumers, it's important for folks to understand, too, the agricultural aspect. This is an organic product. And if we don't get the right amount of rain, or there's something funky with soil, or something happens, it's just going to change. And we, as brewers, have to roll with it and adapt. And there's, for as much as it's like, I got to be so, and for so many beers, it's like, I got to be so spot on, right? And then there's just going to be times where you're like, I have to adjust, right? I just have to adjust. So yeah, like maybe we didn't get the exact hop or this batch or, all these things. When you're talking about an organic product, as consumers, I think everybody's got to realize like there is a modicum of leeway because nature, also climate change, like shit is happening that will change things from the ground, right?
Absolutely, and we're basically not allowed to, for the most part, in a repeatable beer like a Pilsner, we're not allowed to embrace something like terroir, where it's like, oh yeah, this year tastes like this, it needs to taste the same all the time.
Right.
So you've got to deal with that and adjust, and so yeah, I think at the end goal, our specs are always going to be what they are. Yeah. So it's dealing with our inputs and making sure we can hit that spec at the end.
Very cool. Now, Morrison, you wanted to throw down a little bit of a challenge to me. This is the first
I did.
on Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer, and I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I have watched quite a few of your podcasts. I understand that you are not a huge fan of sours.
Correct. I have tried numerous sours. I'm
Right.
open-minded, but I'm not sold on them, which baffles Catherine. But I have also explained I'm not a fan of like sour. I'm not a fan of sour in general.
Right.
So sour beer, there's only been one or two that I've been like, okay. But you have a gauntlet you want to throw down.
Right. So I've had people come in here time and time again, and they go, I'm not a huge fan of sours, and I go, well, just give it a try.
Is that what they say when they first come in? Because that seems kind of weird. Just walk in a brewery and go, just so you know, before you even talk to me, don't like sours.
No, I don't like sours.
Don't like them, so I'm on your board. Don't ask me. Not going to have one.
All the time.
Being a bartender, I saw it so many times. I mean, it was just like, what do you got? And I go, well, we got this whole tap list. Well, I don't like sours. And you go,
You've got
all
a
right,
huge
well,
board. What do you got?
Yeah.
You guys have a giant
The word doesn't even need to
multicolored
come out of
board.
anybody's mouth behind the bar. They're like, no, I'm sorry. I just don't like
Do you
it.
get a
Yeah.
lot of people in here who can't read? Is that the problem?
The board is far away from a lot of the restaurant, a lot of the bar.
Okay.
It's understandable.
All right,
It's understandable. But no, so I see it often that people just go, I don't like sours, and then we give them our sour, and it's very approachable, and we do that for a reason, right?
All right.
Is we want to showcase our kettle sour. We want it to be approachable. So I wanted to test that out with you.
What is your kettle sour? What am I having? And Cody has one in front of him as well. He's already cheating and trying it. Describe again very. The beers here are crystal clear. It's like a spring. It's spring water, only fermented with stuff in it. So I would love to be swimming in it.
That's Lake Michigan water for you. So
I love it.
Well, we start with the Omega Lacto blend, and I really like that. I've done all kinds of things, like just making a culture off of Pilsner malt, and that can get a little risky. So now we just use the Omega Lacto blend. It's great, and we don't take it as far as it can go, but we do give it a nice long souring time. It will develop a little more complexity after, say, it'll be sour in 18 hours, but we'll give it 36.
Wow. Okay.
But really, it's not going to be too sour. We always are fruiting it, but it's not going to be sweet.
Okay.
Or at least too sweet. We'll ferment out the fruit. We're not throwing a ton of puree in
okay.
and then packaging
So
it.
what is this? What is your sour? What is it called? What is in it? It looks lovely.
this is part of our Soul Train Sour series.
Oh, now you're gonna make. So if I don't like it, then I got no soul.
Well, if you
Is
do
that what
like
you're
it, you got to keep coming back
Oh,
in.
then me and Don Cornelius are gonna be drinking here every Friday.
So this is our Soul Train Sour series. This one is Mango Tahine.
I like mango.
Mango,
Tahini.
that's
Mango
what that
tahini.
is.
Tahini.
Yeah.
All right.
It smells like mango. I know we don't always have a sense of smell on this podcast, but it hits the nose as mango pretty hard. Oh!
Here's the thing. This, like you said, this is not pucker your mouth up sour. I'm getting the mango. I'm getting the tahini. It's a nice. There's more of a spice than a sour to me. I get the fruit texture of the mango, which I like mangoes. This is not like putting a sweet tart in my mouth, which is why
We've talked about this, buddy. Your thing is citric acid. You don't like citric acid.
The sours that I've enjoyed have been like this, less puckery, and more like, there's some things happening in this beer.
So when we were talking about the length of time that beer is souring, the longer you leave that beer to sour, the more it's just going to increase in intensity. So pulling it at 36 hours is perfect for you to get the bite that happens right here, like the little stingy thing that happens
That's
right
what
here.
I'm getting a little bit in the jugular.
I'm so proud.
Listen, I've said, damn you, Morrison, for ruining my rep as a guy who
I'm
eats
so
all
glad
sours.
you liked it. I'm so glad.
Again, because it fits what I like in a beer. I like different flavors and different textures and things like that, but I just don't want to go.
Yeah, definitely.
It sounds corny, but like every beer that we make here has our utmost goal is drinkability.
Yeah.
And if we make a beer and you can only drink one of them, then I think we've failed at our goal.
For people who are listening or watching, you've known me for a long time. I wouldn't say that I like this if I didn't like it. I wouldn't have taken the third and fourth drinks of it. I would have gone, oh, yeah, guys, that's something.
That's interesting, yeah. So.
No, we have literally sat in breweries and a brewer's been like, here's this thing, and Brian has drank it and be like, yeah, this isn't for me, but I can see why other people might like.
Yeah,
you'll say it
that's the beauty.
straight to your
There's
face.
enough beer styles for everybody.
Yeah.
So it's not. I don't think it hurts people's feelings when they go, this isn't the kind of style I like. I like this one and this one and this one that you guys, I want to drink those all the time. This one, I get it. My wife loves sours.
Yeah.
She loves sours. So this she would like, but she might go, oh, I didn't even know that was a sour. Like, so there's the opposite ends where I get a little of the sour, but not an overwhelming amount.
Yeah.
Damn you.
Victory for Team Sour.
Well, Jake knows.
Can I ask one quick question before we?
Cody, you're the executive producer. Yes, ask a question.
Thank you. Just before we get to the final questions, you said you like to brew beers that you can drink a lot of, and you don't like the ones where people are like, I can have one, but maybe not a lot. Funny enough, that's like half my beer fridge is the ones where my friends will come over, they have one, they're like, yeah, I couldn't do more than one, but it's really good. Is that a business? Is that because of business? Because you want to be able to sell more? I guess where does that come from?
That's me imposing my own drinking habits on the general public.
That's fair.
I am the king. You will drink my beers.
But it helps with business, too.
Is it?
Especially at a brew pub, if we make a beer, it has to sell because we only have a limited opportunity to distribute beers. So if we make a beer and you can only drink 8 ounces of it at a time, well, we might be sitting on that beer for too long.
That's like our version of peer pressure. You're like, one more?
Well, I was at a local brewery last week for an Oktoberfest, and I saw the brewer, and we interviewed him on the show, and I said, ooh, I'm not sure. Do I go with the Marzen or the Fest beer? And he goes, we got to get rid of the Fest beer. I'm like, there you go. That's okay. That's what I'm going to Then get me a liter of the Fest beer. Let's go. All right. He's Jake Nelson. He's the head brewer. This is Adrian Morrison, or you can just call him Morrison if you come in. He's a brewer. He's also the sales manager. We are at Horse Thief Hollow Brewing Company, 10426 Southwestern Avenue in the Beverly neighborhood of Chicago. HorseThiefBrewing.com is the website. Gentlemen, I know you've seen the podcast. You know this is usually the time for the big three. No, we don't do three anymore. Now it's the final four. Catherine?
Our first question is the same question as it has been. What is the hill that you will die on? What is a beer you will not make?
I'll start because my answer is pretty simple. I'm a very novice when it comes to brewing. I've only been doing it for 3-4 years now, so I don't think there's a beer that I would not try to make.
Okay.
I'm willing to try to make anything at this point. So
Very diplomatic.
yeah.
Nice.
Neutral. I'm Switzerland, right?
But Jake,
All
you don't
right,
have to be Switzerland. You can pick any other country in the world. You can be Lapland.
Oh, this is tough. Do I hate milkshake IPAs more than slushy sours?
Yeah.
But I've made a milkshake IPA, so
Okay.
I will never make a slushy sour.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. I tell you what, those two are pretty common. But if I had a nickel for every time we heard milkshake IPA, I would have about $1 worth, which is a number of people.
It's not bad. All right. So here's the deal: a beer that you guys have brewed, and people might have really loved it, but for whatever reason, whether it's the recipe or your own, as you said, mental acuity trying to hone in, you just will never brew again.
That would be Green Beret. That was our brown ale with pistachio, and it is a heavily requested beer.
It sounds, just from those words, pistachio brown ale, I'm in, 100% in. Why won't you brew it again?
Because it does not sell as well as people think it does. Everyone wants to drink it, but when it comes down to you needing to buy a whole batch, it does not last.
Oh, so unless everybody comes in and buys a keg, it's not worth it.
If you're going to mark yourself down for at least 10 pints a week, I'll make it for you. But
It's a great beer. It's delicious. It's got a very short window of
Why, as a sales guy, why do you think that is? Why do you think a beer that the people who drink it, like you said, Jake, they seem to love it? So what is the hurdle then to go, well, why aren't you drinking more of it, or why isn't everybody drinking this?
So seasonal beers, and I would consider that a seasonal beer,
Okay.
they have a very short window of just desirability, right? There's people that come all year round and ask for a stout, but the only people that are really drinking stouts is in the winter, right? It's the same idea as that, oh man, Green Beret is such a great beer. Yes, but it's more of a fall beer.
Okay.
And so outside of the fall, they might have one, but they're not continually drinking that beer.
that's what it boils down to. They have one.
Yeah.
Oh, is
You
that
have
right?
one.
They have one beer.
Okay. Well,
We want them to have 4. So
See what you get when you don't drink more than one Green Beret? You get nothing. That's why we can't have nice things. Learn that from this podcast. All right. So you guys you get off work, you go home, you're going to have a beer. It could be one of Horse Thief Hollow's beers. It could be the regular old beer. What's your go-to off-the-clock beer?
All right. At risk of being incredibly generic brewer, it's going to be Miller High Life.
Of course it is.
That gives Catherine another $1 because it's
But okay, so that's
$2.
Do you like it because it's so clear, like your beers?
Yeah, and it's just the best beer ever made. So,
Fair enough.
my craft beer answer is going to be Allagash White. It's just incredibly drinkable.
I love Allagash White, but all right, what do you have more in your fridge at home? Do you have more Miller High Life or do you have more Allagash White at home?
Miller High Life.
Okay, then there you go. Don't be ashamed. Don't put your light under a barrel, Jake. Let it shine. Yeah. Let your freak flag fly.
Yeah.
Miller, all right, Morrison. Now we're going to go. Well, it's the sour that I want you to try this one.
Yeah. No, once again, I've watched a ton of your podcasts, and I love how many times this answer comes up. It is Miller.
Is it?
It's just an easy drinking beer. I go to the bars on Western. Guess what I'm drinking? It's Miller. Of course, we have fridges full of beer from other breweries.
Sure.
Brewers love to share beer. It's great.
And that's not a slight on other brewers that you go with Miller High. I mean, I came up drinking the little Miller Killers. The 8-pack of those. That was my go-to. Maybe underage, maybe not. Who knows? That was my go-to beer. So it's funny when we go to Beer Fest and we peek behind the curtain and see you brewer types. There's pallets of High Life. It's like, good Lord!
It's the first beer to run out at Fobab.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That doesn't surprise me.
And in order to not do a disservice to my fellow Chicago craft brewers, I'm also going to throw in the answer of Daisy Cutter because it's so incredibly drinkable.
Daisy Cutter is great.
If you're drinking a hoppy
Daisy Cutter is
beer
great.
that has that same level of drinkability as a High Life, you can crush them all day. It's Daisy Cutter, and it comes in a 12-pack, 12 ounce.
Very
It's
nice.
killer.
Shout out Metropolitan. All right, Catherine. This is listen, Morrison. You think you had all the inside track on the first three questions?
I thought I did.
Yeah, sit back and relax.
I know. We got a whole new question.
Okay.
I want to talk about your favorite food and the beer that you pair with it. It can be like a cuisine style and your favorite beer to pair with it, or like your favorite food and what beer you put with it.
This might be a ridiculously easy answer, but I've made brats. I made beer brats with one of our beers before, Little Wing, of course. And so I love to pair Little Wing with the Little Wing beer brats. I know it's a super easy answer because I used it, but it was really good. And using our beer in the beer brats, it brought out that Little Wing flavor, brought out the brat flavor, and then, of course, I can't. I use one can, and then I have 3 cans to just enjoy.
Yeah, you can't leave them sit there.
Exactly. Yeah.
What are you, a savage?
Well, and it's not that it's a basic answer. When you're cooking with the beer, there's this whole thing with wine, right? Like, don't cook with wine you wouldn't drink. It's like a thing that you hear chefs say all the time. And the same goes for beer. Don't cook with beer that you wouldn't drink, right?
Right, but if every brewer stuck to that, Catherine, everything would be cooked with High Life.
You know
And
what?
Every
great.
dish would have High Life.
Don't threaten me with a good time. I've done beer brats with High Life.
I have too.
Oh.
All right,
There you go.
you had time,
There you
Jake. What are you thinking?
So it's going to be our Fat Chef sandwich. It's our combo of our smoked pulled pork along with our smoked hot lank. And I think that just pairs really well with our kitchen sink pale ale. It's malty. It's not too bitter, but it's still hoppy. It's old school. It's in the vein of Sierra Nevada. Those malty flavors just really play nicely with the smokiness.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of a sweet barbecue sauce on there that just complements it really well. And I think that is just such a classic Horse Thief Hollow pairing. One of our longest running beers. One of our
awesome.
longest running menu items.
Perfect.
Well, in fact, pale ales, too, just because of their little residual bitterness, will always cut through something that's unctuous, will always cut through something that's a little bit fatty and rich, and it'll help your palate actually get ready for your next bite. And I think they work so symbiotically together.
You guys don't know this, but anytime Catherine says unctuous, that's it. We wrap it up. Show is over. So
Listen,
thanks for joining us.
That is a
for
great
this-
word.
Thanks for joining us on this edition of Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer. Be sure to support your local brewery because times are tough for some of your favorite breweries, and if you don't support them, they go the way of Green Beret, and you're out of luck. No good. So don't do that. Crafty Brewers Tales Behind Craft Beer is produced by award-winning podcast producer Cody Goff. You can read our blog, grab some merch, check out episodes, and get in touch with us on our website, craftybrewerspod.com. Do you have a brewery you'd like us to go visit? Or are you a brewer who, like Jacob Morrison, probably said, these guys weren't so bad. Yeah, we'd come on your show. Well, then you need to drop us a line, craftybrewerspod@gmail.com. Catherine, what sort of merch are we featuring this week?
Today, we are featuring, or the featured merch for this episode is our Taste the Grainbow shirts, which I just think are great because they show the beer rainbow, and who doesn't love a beer rainbow? So that's,
Taste the Rainbow. You can find that on our website, craftybrewerspod.com. And Catherine, I am not a social media maven. You are. How can folks follow us on social media?
You can follow us all over the place. We are on Facebook, Crafty Brewers, Tales Behind Craft Beer. We are on Instagram, crafty_brewers_pod. You should also be checking us out on YouTube, hitting subscribe, sharing episodes with your friends, because if you can tell them what beer you're drinking in a photo, you can tell them what beer you're drinking by sharing a link. And that would be hugely helpful.
And Cody wants me to tell everybody, if you were listening on Apple Podcasts, oh my gosh, tap your phone and give us a 5-star review, because I think then we get candy or something. It's very exciting if we get, yes, Catherine, it's a new thing on Apple Podcasts, chocolates. So give us a 5-star review, because my blood sugar is very low. Thanks again to Jake Nelson and Adrian Morrison from Horse Thief Hollow for being with us today. She's Catherine Vallow.
He's Brian Noonan.
Any last words?
I mean, I had a concept of a last word. I just didn't have a real last word.
Cheers.
Cheers.